In order to stop the wedding between Simon and me, Simon's childhood sweetheart intentionally fell into the water. Little did she expect that the straps of her life jacket weren't fastened properly, turning her fake fall into a real cry for help. Simon pleaded with me in a humble tone, "Lucy and I grew up together. I can't just stand by and watch her die. Nancy, I know you can swim. Please save Lucy, and we'll both be grateful to you." Under the moral coercion of everyone, I jumped into the sea to save someone. However, saving someone is completely different from swimming. Lucy, out of fear, grabbed me and desperately dragged me, nearly pushing me underwater and drowning me. After being rescued, I suffered a severe lung infection due to drowning and was confined to bed. Simon took all the shares of my company, using the excuse that I was in poor health and needed rest. After he took control of the company, he asked me for a divorce and immediately flew off with Lucy. I was so angry that I coughed up blood and died. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Lucy struggling in the water, and Simon was already grabbing the railing, about to jump. I quietly took 2 steps back. In this life, he will save his childhood sweetheart himself. Someone's fallen into the water. Quick, save them, help, brother Simon, save me, glug glug. The surroundings were chaotic, with a jumble of footsteps, cries for help, and clamoring voices, bringing me back to my senses. I blankly lowered my head and saw that I was actually wearing a white wedding dress. I was all too familiar with this wedding dress. It was the one I had specially custom-ordered abroad for my wedding with Simon. I had actually been reborn back to the day of my wedding with Simon. I suddenly looked up, staring at the familiar scene before me. Lucy struggled desperately in the seawater. The life jacket that had been on her was now floating just out of her reach, drifting farther and farther away as she flailed. Meanwhile, Simon, upon hearing Lucy's cry for help, immediately abandoned me, his bride, and rushed to the deck of the cruise ship. He stepped onto the railing, ready to jump. I had followed closely behind Simon and, seeing this scene, immediately reached out to stop him. I knew that Simon not only couldn't swim but was also somewhat afraid of water. He nearly drowned when he fell into the river as a child, and it was said that Lucy called for adults to save him, so he held a special feeling for Lucy. Yet Simon still chose to hold the wedding on a cruise ship. I later found out that the cruise ship wedding was Lucy's suggestion. The fall into the water was also something Lucy had planned long ago. Because Simon's mother dislikes Lucy, she firmly opposes their relationship. Simon went on hunger strikes and even attempted suicide. But in the end, he couldn't defy his mother and was forced to go on a blind date with me. He claims to love me, but in his heart, Lucy is still the one he loves the most. Lucy was also unwilling to give up on Simon. To sabotage our wedding, she went to great lengths, even putting herself in danger. She wanted to prove her position in Simon's heart, making me back off and initiate the breakup. What a deeply moving pair of lovers. If I weren't stuck in the middle like a fool, I would surely bless them too. But later, when Simon took an interest in the company I owned and saw that I was frail and ill, he adjusted his strategy. Lucy choked on another mouthful of water. The more she struggled, the more seawater flooded her mouth and nose. She never expected that her life jacket wasn't properly fastened. I lowered my head and sneered, taking a few more steps back. In this lifetime, not only will I not jump into the water to save anyone, but I will also make them face the consequences of their own actions. Simon had already climbed over the railing, but just as he was about to jump, he suddenly stopped. He watched the swaying sea, sweat instantly beading on his forehead and streaming down his cheeks. He began to gasp for air, leaning his body against the railing before turning around in confusion. When Simon noticed me standing behind him, his eyes lit up. "Nancy, Nancy, pull me up first." I saw his whole body trembling. So he's still afraid after all. I thought true love could conquer all difficulties in the world. "Nancy, I remember you can swim, please." Before Simon could start with his moral coercion, I loudly interrupted him. "Simon, I know you two are childhood sweethearts, growing up together. I also know you can't bear to watch her drown, but the one you're supposed to marry is me. You can't even swim, yet you're willing to jump in for her. Simon, have you ever considered how I feel? How could you do this to me?" I was nearly hysterical, and Simon's words were completely drowned out by my screams. Just as I paused to catch my breath, Lucy's mother limped over in a hurry. She is the nanny of the Duncan family. She lost her husband at a young age and became lame, so she has been living with Lucy at the Duncan family, just getting by. She has always hoped her daughter would marry Simon. When I visited the Duncan family, she often played tricks to embarrass me. At this moment, Lucy's mother had no time for sarcastic remarks. She pleaded with Simon, "Simon, I'm begging you, she's my only daughter. For the sake of her saving you when you were young, please pull her out, okay?" The guests also gathered around, chattering and urging Simon to jump in and save the person, just like they urged me in my past life. Hearing that the person who had fallen into the water had once saved Simon, they stood on the moral high ground even more. Making sarcastic remarks from the sidelines, I also feigned an anxious expression, pretending to be at a loss for what to do. Simon looked at Lucy in the sea. Only half of her head was above the water. I noticed that someone had already called the crew, and they were preparing to go into the water to rescue her. How could this be allowed? I sighed and turned to the guests, saying, "Stop pressuring Simon. He's not the kind of person who fears death. Although the one who fell into the water once saved his life, he can't risk his own life just because of past gratitude." I looked at Lucy's mother again, adding fuel to the fire. "Auntie, don't make things difficult for Simon either. After all, he's a young master. In his eyes, your only precious daughter is nothing more than the daughter of a nanny." A flash of anger and humiliation crossed Lucy's mother's eyes, and then her knees gave way as she knelt before Simon. Simon couldn't handle it anymore. At the moment Lucy could no longer struggle and slowly sank. Simon gritted his teeth fiercely and turned to climb back from outside the railing. Yes, climb back. He simply didn't have the courage to jump in and save her. As he shakily gripped the railing and climbed upward, his lips trembled as he muttered, "It's not that I don't want to save someone, I really can't swim. If I jump in, I'll die." So, since he wouldn't save anyone himself, he insisted on forcing someone else to do it. He cares about Lucy's life, he cares about his own life, but he doesn't care about mine at all. At this moment, I have only one thought: he must go down. He must give an explanation to my past self. I shouted, "Simon, come up quickly, you're afraid of water." But I'm not. I'll go down and save her right now. But unlike in my previous life, I didn't take off the hem of my wedding dress. Instead, I removed the crown from my head and, using the dress as cover, charged straight at Simon. The sharpest part of the crown pierced the fleshy part of Simon's hand between his thumb and index finger. He suddenly cried out in pain, and his already loose grip loosened even more as he recoiled, causing him to fall backward into the sea. But my wedding dress got tangled on the railing, preventing me from climbing over. "Simon, don't go down." I tried hard to reach out, but I couldn't grasp anything. Simon flailed his legs in the air in panic, then landed perfectly on Lucy's head. A huge wave appeared on the sea surface, and the corners of my mouth lifted sharply like the waves, only to quickly pull back. By now, the ship's lifeguards had already lowered the lifeboat. Under the hopeful gazes of everyone and me, they quickly rescued both individuals who had fallen into the water. Although the cruise ship was equipped with a medical room, the doctor had taken leave on the day of departure, which was also the reason I hadn't received timely treatment in my previous life. In this lifetime, it's just their bad luck. I knelt awkwardly beside Simon, crying my heart out. "I know you like her, but we were about to get married. How could you abandon me for her? Simon, if you didn't want to be with me, you could have told me. I wouldn't have stopped you too. Why did you have to choose our wedding day to die together?" The guests who had just urged Simon to save someone were now all silent. They pricked up their ears, all intently listening to the gossip. Even the lifeguard performing CPR on Simon paused the compressions for 2 seconds. After simple first aid, both were out of life-threatening danger but remained unconscious. Lucy was in better condition than Simon, as she had specifically learned underwater breathing techniques before planning to fall into the water. Simon had it really rough. He was the one who truly, accidentally, fell into the water. Simon was already afraid of water, and the moment he fell into the sea, he lost consciousness with his mouth wide open. When seawater rushed into his mouth and nose, he was choked awake only to be choked unconscious again. The amount of water the lifeguard pressed out of him was enough for him to take a bath. Watching the bloody water he spat out, I contentedly wiped my nose with my wedding dress. With the groom Simon in such a state, the wedding was naturally put on hold. The cruise ship was now in international waters, and we could only wait for helicopter rescue. At this point, I was genuinely praying for Simon. If he died just like that, it would be far too easy for him. The pain, suffering, betrayal, and humiliation I endured in my past life, he must experience it all in this one. I dragged my wedding dress, with my hair disheveled, and knelt at the entrance of the medical room for 2 hours. Everyone was moved by my deep affection. Finally, The helicopter arrived and transported both of them to the hospital. That same afternoon, I, along with my bridesmaids, rushed to the emergency room. Lucy had already passed the critical stage, but she hadn't woken up yet. It seemed Simon had hit her quite hard. In her previous life, at this very moment, she had already thrown herself into Simon's arms, sobbing softly, "It's all my fault. I was feeling upset about your wedding and just wanted to go to the deck to get some fresh air." Simon held her tightly and comforted her softly, saying, "It was Nancy who insisted on jumping. She was just trying to show off. You can't blame anyone else. This time, it's me standing outside, while Simon is still in critical condition." Simon's mother saw me and rushed forward, trying to slap me. "If it weren't for you egging my son on, why would he want to have his wedding on a cruise ship? He's been afraid of water since he was a child. It's all your fault, otherwise my son would never have ended up like this." How ridiculous. It was clearly her own son's decision, but as soon as something goes wrong, she has to blame someone else. Simon's mother raised her hand high, but before she could touch me, she was stopped by the 4 bridesmaids. "They are all hostesses I paid for," and to avoid Simon's brothers causing trouble with the bridesmaids, I didn't dare let my close friends take the stage. At this moment, the 4 hostesses unexpectedly played their roles. They all pointed out how Simon disregarded the wedding and insisted on jumping into the sea to save someone. "Don't even try to call it a heroic act. I heard the woman in the water is the groom's childhood sweetheart." Just seeing them look at each other feels suspicious. Their eyes are practically tangled up. You're not blaming your own son, who abandoned the wedding and jumped into the sea, but instead pointing fingers at the innocent bride. Sounds like a guilty conscience to me. "I have the footage from the ship. Don't even think about framing an innocent person." Of course, there were people recording at the wedding, but they were all behind me. They captured Simon quickly running onto the deck, climbing over the ship's railing, and making a move to jump. Then, they pointed the camera at Lucy struggling in the water, completely missing my small actions. After watching the footage, Simon's parents turned pale. Simon's mother gritted her teeth, unwilling to give up, and stubbornly pointed at the footage, questioning me. "You were right behind Simon. Why didn't you stop him? You could have reached him easily." I covered my face, putting on a sad and haggard expression, as if my heart had been utterly broken, and I just kept crying without answering. 2 young women comforted me from either side, while the other 2 stepped forward and pointed at Simon's mother, scolding her, "Like mother, like son. The son is entangled with another woman, and the mother just shifts the blame. Look at your son's resolute expression. Who would dare to pull him, and after pulling him, would you then blame someone else for pushing your son into the water?" "Exactly. Are you blaming our bride for your son's change of heart? Do you also want to say that it's the bride's fault for not being able to keep your son's heart? The little wretch who caused your son to fall into the water is lying in the next room. Why don't you go slap her?" Simon's mother was too confident, trying to take on 4 people at once, and nearly fainted from anger. In the end, a nurse came out and strictly forbade everyone from making noise in the hospital. I secretly glanced at Simon's mother, who was clutching her chest, feeling secretly pleased. This old woman was her son's accomplice. In my previous life, she often came to humiliate me under the guise of visiting me while I was sick. At that time, I was already bedridden and could hardly get up. She stood by my bed with her hands on her hips, cursing me as a hen that doesn't lay eggs, saying I was dying from illness and still dragging her son down. In the end, she even used a photo of Simon and Lucy to provoke me. She laughed arrogantly. "Look how well-matched Lucy and our Simon are." It didn't take long after they got together for Lucy to get pregnant. She's such a blessed child, but she forgot that it was she who had strongly opposed Simon and Lucy being together in the first place. She looked down on Lucy's mother for being a nanny and felt that Lucy was also inferior. Right now, it was the time she hated Lucy the most. Yet her only son had nearly lost his life for Lucy. I didn't stay at the hospital for too long before being surrounded by 4 young women who helped me change clothes. After assessing the capabilities of the 4 young women, I arranged a hotel for them and planned to continue hiring them for another 3 months. That night, I opened a short video platform, edited the wedding footage, and posted it online, especially the part where I knelt outside the medical room. The angle was captured perfectly, and everyone who saw it said I looked completely shattered. I even bought myself a trending spot, then turned off my phone and had a good night's sleep. I didn't wake up until noon the next day. I applied a sickly makeup look, grabbed the chicken soup delivered by the delivery guy, and headed back to the hospital with 4 young women. I arrived just in time. Simon had woken up half an hour ago. As for Lucy, I heard she woke up late last night. I knocked on the door of Simon's hospital room and, without waiting for a response, rushed in with the girls in tow. In the VIP ward, Simon was the only one there. Simon lay on the bed, his eyes half open, staring fixedly at the ceiling. He wore an oxygen mask, his exposed chest covered with instruments measuring his electrocardiogram. His left arm was strapped with a blood pressure monitor. His right hand had an 4-needle inserted, and both legs were wrapped in antithrombosis devices. Most importantly, he was also hooked up to a urine bag. The sorrow I had been building up almost faltered when I saw the urine bag bubbling. I quickly lowered my head, covered my face, and my shoulders began to tremble. I had to cover my face. I couldn't let Simon see my happiness just yet. The young ladies quickly gathered around to comfort and console me, completely ignoring Simon lying there. Simon heard the commotion and turned his head with difficulty. The moment he saw me, his eyes were filled with anger. He yanked the oxygen mask off his face, so agitated that he tried to sit up, but he was too weak. The moment he moved, he started coughing, the violent coughs turning his face bright red. After gasping for a long time, he finally asked me in a hoarse voice, "Nancy, why didn't you stop me this time? You should have stopped me and jumped into the sea yourself. You even stabbed my hand. You deliberately made me fall into the water." Simon's eyes were bloodshot as he shakily raised his injured left hand. As he spoke, my heart tightened. Could it be that Simon had also been reborn? I bit the tip of my tongue hard, and as the pain surged, I looked up again with tears streaming down my face. "Simon, what are you talking about? If you hadn't jumped in first, I would have already gone into the water to save them. Your hand wasn't injured by me either. Think again. Did you hurt yourself by bumping into the railing? Can't remember. Maybe you've been in the water too long and are experiencing after effects." Simon stared into my eyes as if trying to see right through me. He asked, word by word, "Nancy, you're not stopping me because you've been reborn too, haven't you? You hate me for abandoning you in our past life, so in this life, you want my life." The 4 girls stood by, exchanging glances, all thinking that Simon might have been driven mad by the water. Only I understood what he was talking about. I looked back at him, my eyes clear and bright, without a trace of guilt. I want him dead. And I want it with righteous conviction. Why should I feel guilty? My resolute expression was as if I were about to join the party. "I don't understand what you're talking about." Simon started coughing again, shaking his head as if possessed. "That's not right. You were supposed to jump into the water to save Lucy. Then you'd get a lung infection, and I'd take care of you. You'd be so moved that you'd hand over your entire company to me. After that, when you were on the verge of death, I'd dump you, marry Lucy, and have children with her. Yes, that's exactly what he did in my previous life. Everyone said he never abandoned me and told me I should be grateful, but little did they know his real goal was the company my parents left me. I loved him, I trusted him, and in the end, I lost both my love and my wealth, and even paid with my life." And Simon, having gained both fame and fortune, married the woman he loved and lived a happy and fulfilling life. Why? Simon didn't see my fierce hatred. He placed his hand on his head and muttered to himself, "How could I jump down to save someone? Would I end up suffering from an illness like Nancy did in her past life, living a life worse than death? I don't want that. I don't want that. Nancy is fine. So how am I supposed to get her company? How am I supposed to spend her money and live happily ever after with Lucy? I regret it. Why didn't I get reborn earlier, that way? I could have just pushed Nancy into the water." The hatred almost pierced through my heart. My fists clenched tightly, just as I was about to lose control. The door to the hospital room was pushed open. Lucy sat in the wheelchair and entered the hospital room. My gaze lingered on her face, on her left cheek, from the eyelid to the corner of her mouth. There was an extremely deep scar. I immediately thought of the crown that had stabbed Simon. He fell into the water holding that crown, and it landed right on Lucy's head, even cutting her face. A $50,000 crown, worth every penny. Noticing my gaze, Lucy's face twisted in rage, as if she were about to rush over and strangle me the next second. Unfortunately, she didn't have the strength to even stand up. All she could do was will herself over to Simon and start crying. "Wah, brother Simon, are you okay? You scared Lucy to death. Lucy thought she'd never see you again." The weakened Simon couldn't handle Lucy's forceful pounce at all. He bent over sharply like a dying fish, then started coughing, and bubbles began to appear in the urine bag again. Seeing those bubbles, I suddenly wasn't angry anymore. as if my mammary glands had instantly cleared up. Anyway, in this lifetime, I'm not the one living a life worse than death. The indignant young ladies wanted to step forward to deal with the scumbag and the despicable woman, but I stopped them. No rush. Their retribution is yet to come. Lucy, still clinging to Simon's arm, was trying to make her presence known. Simon, you're so good to me. If you hadn't jumped in without hesitation, I might have drowned. She turned her head to look at me with a provocative expression. Sister Nancy, you won't blame me for ruining the wedding you so carefully planned, will you? It's all because of the deep bond Simon and I have shared over the years. I smiled and pointed at Simon's arm, which was pressed so tightly by Lucy that the blood had started to flow back, turning the four-tube crimson. Of course not. Why would I blame you? After I finished speaking, I pulled the young ladies to stand further away. Only then did Lucy notice. And while crying and apologizing, she frantically rubbed Simon's arm, watching Simon scream in pain and the crooked needle. I hummed a tune and pressed the emergency call button. From the doctor, I obtained Simon's medical diagnosis. As expected, it's a lung infection, but compared to my previous life, his condition is more severe, accompanied by lung bleeding, cerebral hypoxia, and so on. In my previous life, even after being provoked by them like that, I still managed to survive for 5 years. I wonder how long Simon can hold on in this life. Half an hour later, I returned to the ward and explained Simon's condition to him in detail. The doctor said that due to the shock, your brain has been damaged, and it may affect your intelligence in the future, and your lungs. Sigh, in the future, forget about strenuous exercise. You might even become bedridden, a cripple. I emphasized the word useless with great force. Simon couldn't take it anymore. He held his head in disbelief, his fingers digging into his hair and then slowly pulling downward, letting out a painful roar. I handed the report to Simon's mother, who had just arrived, and she flew into a rage. This time, she didn't come at me, but instead slapped Lucy, who was cowering in the corner. Bitch, it's all because of you that my son ended up like this. Damn it, why didn't you drown? Lucy covered her face, silently weeping, but her eyes were fixed on Simon lying there, still hoping he would stand up for her. With 4 girls standing by my side watching the show, even Simon's mother would think twice before venting her anger on me. Simon had long lost any sentiment of cherishing the fairer sex. He was immersed in his own world, completely oblivious to Lucy's resentful gaze. No, it shouldn't be like this. It must be a dream, a dream. Clearly, it wasn't like this. Simon suddenly lowered his hand, struggling to lift his head, and gazed at me with deep affection. Nancy, we're already married. Can you sell the company and use the money to treat my illness? Simon's parents run a chain of supermarkets. In recent years, affected by online shopping platforms, their profits have been declining, but they can still afford the money for his treatment. He's so sick, yet he still hasn't forgotten to scheme against my company. The hospital room instantly became so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Even Simon's mother was probably stunned for a moment. Simon, afraid I wouldn't agree, quickly promised me, once I recover, I promise to arrange a grand wedding and make you the happiest woman in the world. Of course, once I recover, I will repay you the money from selling the company, both principal and interest. If it weren't for the experiences of my past life, I would have been genuinely moved by his sincerity. I barely managed to hold back, almost bursting into laughter. Then, I pretended to be troubled and said, but in your current state, how can I feel at ease handling the company? As your wife, I should be by your side. Simon's mother rolled her eyes and put on a warm smile. Nancy, why would you need to do the work of serving others yourself? She glared fiercely at Lucy, who was still crying. Some people always have to pay the price for what they've done. I completely agree with that statement. Simon's mother immediately arranged for Lucy to take care of Simon in the hospital room. Without even considering that Lucy herself hadn't fully recovered yet, she said she had originally planned to fire Lucy's mother, and this would be their chance to make up for their mistakes. Of course, Lucy was unwilling, but the 4 young ladies with me immediately stepped forward, patting their chests and saying they were willing to stay and take care of Simon. Looking at the 4 beautiful and tall women, Lucy became anxious. Of course, I will take care of Simon myself. My mother is a nanny, and I've known how to care for others since I was young. I don't need anyone else to interfere. I pretended to sigh in difficulty and agreed to this arrangement. Thus began Lucy's painful career as a caregiver. To find out about their situation as soon as possible, I even hired a young man who had some connections at the hospital and was passionate about photography. Every day, the young man would send me several videos. In the first few days, Lucy was overjoyed. She couldn't wait to be alone with Simon to nurture their relationship, but Simon was sickly and covered in medical equipment. Not only was it impossible to get close to him, but even turning over required assistance, and Simon's mother clearly harbored deep hatred for Lucy. She was determined to punish the woman who had seduced her son and didn't even bother hiring an additional caregiver every day, besides feeding him and giving him medicine, staying up late to keep him company. Lucy also had to wipe Simon's body and change his clothes, as he was very particular about cleanliness. What Lucy found most unbearable was that Simon couldn't get out of bed, so she had to handle all his bathroom needs. Although Lucy was the daughter of a nanny, she grew up with Simon and, apart from being mocked a few times, never had to do any dirty or heavy work. In just a few days, she visibly lost weight. Of course, she didn't dare complain about Simon's mother, so she could only vent her grievances to Simon, not wanting to outright say she was unwilling to take care of Simon. Lucy would complain about her hands getting rough one day and cough incessantly while holding her waist the next. Simon is no fool. Of course he understands what Lucy wants, but the look in his eyes when he gazes at Lucy grows increasingly obscure, until one day, after Lucy changes Simon's socks, she suddenly erupts. She throws the dirty socks on the ground, stomps on them frantically with her feet, and then bursts into loud sobs. "They're so dirty and smelly. Why should I be the one to do this? It's not like I forced you to jump into the sea to save me. Why is everyone blaming me?" She blurted out without thinking. "I was soaking in the sea for so long, and I didn't end up like you, choking on a few mouthfuls of water and then lying in bed unable to move." "You're completely useless," Simon, who was already feeling miserable all over, finally snapped. He grabbed the fruit knife from the table and threw it at Lucy. Another wound appeared on Lucy's face. She covered her face and let out a sharp scream, which brought the doctors and nurses running. I don't know how the final negotiation went, but in the videos a few days later, they seemed to have reconciled. However, I noticed that in several clips, Simon's gaze as he stared at Lucy was eerie and particularly unsettling. Simon's mother hired another caregiver for him, so Lucy no longer had to deal with the filth herself. I stopped paying attention to them and began to reorganize my own company. After my parents passed away unexpectedly, I haven't been very dedicated to managing the company. Before marrying Simon, he kept brainwashing me, telling me to stop being in the public eye and return to family life. In my previous life, I didn't resist either. After my health started to decline, I even handed over the management rights to Simon. In this life, I won't be foolish anymore. This company is the foundation of my existence. I tried hard to recall who immediately turned against me back when I fell ill. These are the primary targets I need to clear out first. I was afraid that once Simon got a little better and realized I had no intention of selling the company, he might come up with some way to strike at me. After all, he has lived 2 lifetimes. The money he swindled from me in my previous life allowed him to live comfortably and freely. How could he possibly give that up? I put all my effort into it and thoroughly purged the entire company. I asked 4 young women, all from families that favored sons over daughters, who were sent out to work before graduating. They didn't want to work as hostesses but couldn't find jobs due to their low education levels. They all wanted to follow me, so I arranged for them to join the company. 2 were placed in the public relations department, and 2 in the sales department. Unexpectedly, they actually managed to secure several business deals for me. They are happy, and I am happy too. A win-win situation. Simon calls me every day to ask about my company. I'm not sure if it's because he's feeling unwell, but he's even more eager to get his hands on my money when I'm uncertain about a certain executive in the company. I also subtly probe him for information. Simon wasn't without suspicion. He would occasionally mention events from his past life that had never happened in this one. I would pretend not to understand, and if I really couldn't remember, I'd just make an excuse or change the subject. However, even if I occasionally slipped up, Simon couldn't catch me. His mind really wasn't as sharp anymore. Often, after questioning me, he would forget what he had said. Sometimes, I still have to remind him. We spent a month in this kind of mutual testing. Simon was about to be discharged from the hospital, and I personally drove to pick him up. I arrived more than an hour early and stood right at the door of his hospital room. I pulled the door open a crack, but the 2 people inside didn't notice at all. Simon looked pale and thin, with dark circles under his eyes, as if he had aged 10 years. He kept coughing, then spat on the floor, wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth with his hand, and cursed, saying the hospital was full of quacks. He used to be so gentle, elegant, and well-spoken, but now he seemed like a completely different person. This is his true self. Lucy sat on the edge of the bed, close to Simon, and fed him a piece of cut apple. Brother Simon, please don't let Simon's mother scold me again, okay? The place where she hit me last time still hurts. Simon glanced at the wounds on Lucy's face. Both scars were left by him, although a month has passed for recovery. The scar is still clearly visible. Simon pushed her away with some disgust. How dare you say that? If it weren't for you, would I have gotten this sick? Cough, cough, cough. A trace of unwillingness flashed in Lucy's eyes. I watched her stagger as she helped Simon up and walked to the bathroom. Simon's cursing rang out. Damn it, you're just a nanny's daughter, and you don't even know how to take care of someone. Didn't your mother teach you properly? Soon after, Lucy's sobbing could be heard. I brought both Simon and Lucy back to the Duncan residence. Simon was being supported by Lucy, as if they were the loving couple, while I trailed behind them. As soon as they entered, Simon was surrounded by a few people. They were Simon's closest friends, and two of them had even witnessed the cruise ship incident. Simon, we've been wanting to visit you in the hospital, but we've been a bit busy and couldn't find the time. Yes, since you've been discharged from the hospital. We thought we should celebrate for you. Simon forced a smile and hugged each of them one by one. Whether it was sincere or not, he put on a great show on the surface. As soon as Simon sat down, he couldn't help but start coughing. His close friends all frowned, and the one sitting closest even quickly left his seat, excusing himself to go to the restroom and running off. Simon covered his mouth, his whole body trembling, unsure whether it was from the coughing or from anger. Finally catching his breath, he weakly asked Lucy to serve tea to everyone. They all clearly knew about the relationship between Simon and Lucy. While calling me sister-in-law with their words, they were actually winking at Lucy. I played along with their act, smiling all the while. After all, I was the one who revealed Simon's discharge time, just so they would come over and gather. I saw Lucy in the kitchen and deliberately pretended to be on a phone call. Yeah, all his friends are here. I heard some of them come from families that own companies. Simon said I absolutely have to entertain them well. Soon, my in-laws will also bring their friends over. Yes, it's to introduce me to everyone. When I turned around again, Lucy was already gone. I smiled and returned to the living room, where Lucy was sitting next to Simon, whispering in his ear. Simon saw me, pushed Lucy away, and took a few deep breaths. His after-effects were quite severe, either coughing or struggling to breathe. Nancy, I left my ID at the hospital, and I still need it. Could you please go get it for me? His eyes were evasive, but he insisted that I go retrieve it. I quietly recorded my conversation with him, then smiled and walked away with my bag. Just as I reached the door, a delivery guy arrived. I took a deliberate look. Seafood, grilled meat, fried skewers, and all kinds of foods that are off-limits for lung conditions, along with several cases of alcohol, beer, baijiu, and foreign liquor. All included. I smiled and returned to my villa, then called the hospital to ask the nurses to help look for the lost ID documents. I quickly lay down to take a nap, as it's likely to get lively tonight. 3 hours later, my phone started vibrating frantically. As soon as I answered, I heard a chaotic mix of shouting, crying, and the sound of things being smashed, all tearing through my eardrums. Simon's mother's hoarse curses came through the receiver. Nancy, where the hell have you been? Get to the hospital quickly. Simon is not doing well. I adjusted my voice, sounding both anxious and tearful. What happened? He was fine when I left. Simon's mother told me to stop talking nonsense and get over there quickly. Then hung up the phone. This is my second time outside the emergency room. Lucy is kneeling there with her hands clasped together, as if in prayer, as if in supplication. Simon's mother stood with her hands on her hips, her face full of anger. Before she could speak, I took the initiative. What exactly happened? I had only just left, and he got into trouble. What are you all trying to do? Does this family fall apart without me? Simon's mother was intimidated by my presence and didn't dare to meet my eyes. To save face, she immediately shifted her target and kicked Lucy, who was kneeling there. Who told you to order all that food and alcohol? You knew Simon hadn't fully recovered yet. Are you trying to kill him? Lucy was knocked down by the kick, revealing the bright red slap mark on her face. She retorted, but you and Simon's dad were there too, and neither of you tried to stop Simon from drinking less. Simon's mother went crazy again, grabbing Lucy's hair and slamming her head against the wall. I quickly stepped back, afraid that blood would splatter on my clothes. With the doctor's efforts, Simon was saved once again. This time, Simon's mother didn't want Lucy near her son anymore. She wanted me to stay and take care of him. I refused, using the excuse of handling company assets. I didn't go back to the hospital until 2 weeks later, when Simon called me. His voice was weak, like that of a dying old man. "Nancy, why haven't you come to see me?" I gently explained to him that we are currently in the process of raising funds and preparing for an IPO. An IPO? His voice suddenly rose, straining his lungs, and he began coughing again. Cough, cough. "Why go public? Didn't you promise to sell the company to pay for my treatment? You know, the doctor said that in my current condition, the only option is a lung transplant. But the lung transplant technology is not yet mature. It's very risky, and it requires a huge amount of money. Nancy, I'm begging you, please save me. For the sake of how much I love you." I turned my head away and thought of the saddest things in my life just to keep from laughing out loud. He loves me. He actually said he loves me. He already has memories of his past life, so he knows full well he never loved me. And yet he still tries to deceive me. I told him that a listed company could fetch a better price. He was half believing and half doubting, urging me to quickly go to the hospital to see him and discuss company matters face to face. Of course, I had to go. The more miserable he looked, the more satisfied I felt. I casually picked up a few documents I had forged earlier and entered the hospital room. Now, Simon looked as if he had been dried out, withered, sallow, and lifeless. Lucy was nowhere to be seen nearby. Simon was the mastermind behind my tragic death in my previous life, and Lucy was his accomplice. Naturally, Simon must pay with his life, but I won't let Lucy off either. I first inquired about Simon's condition, his somewhat clouded eyes fixed intently on me. I patted his emaciated hand reassuringly a couple of times, then took out the documents and flipped through them page by page for him to see. Simon's eyes lit up. "They're really willing to buy it for $1 billion, of course they are. The company's prospects are excellent, but the contract will only be signed after it goes public." I showed a troubled expression. "But you need the money urgently, I'm afraid." Simon gritted his teeth and said, "It's fine, just go ahead and do it. As for the money, my parents still have some. If it's really not enough, I'll have them transfer the supermarket first. After all, it's been losing money for years anyway." I was waiting for him to say exactly that. He was fully committed to playing the role of the devoted male lead, professing his undying love for me with grand promises. I played along, pretending that he was the only one for me, even going so far as to spout nonsense like having 8 children together without batting an eye. After all, it's all about deceiving each other. Who is more innocent than whom? Then I changed the subject and asked about Lucy. "Why haven't I seen Lucy?" "You ended up like this because of her. Even if your mother-in-law doesn't like her, she should at least show some concern." Simon fell silent. Of course, I knew the reason. A week ago, Lucy had a big argument with Simon. Lucy is suing Simon for intentional assault. The reason is that the Duncan family is planning to fire Lucy's mother. In the video, Lucy is causing a scene in the hospital room. "I saved you before, and now you've saved me. We're even. But why are you firing my mom? She's old, her legs aren't good. And it'll be hard for her to find another job. Are you trying to drive us mother and daughter to our deaths?" I tucked the blanket around Simon and sighed. "You used to be so good to her, even bought her a lot of luxury items. But who would have thought that when you got this sick and needed money, she just disappeared without a trace? Anyone with a bit of common sense would know you can't drink, yet she still bought so much. Wasn't it just to embarrass you in front of your friends, or worse? What if you had died?" My words made Simon clench his fists tightly. Seeing that my goal was achieved, I excused myself, saying I had work to attend to at the company, and left. Of course, just causing a little trouble for Simon wasn't enough. I wrote an anonymous letter reporting that Simon's family's supermarket was selling expired food and had fire safety hazards. Soon, the food safety department and the fire department penalized the supermarket and ordered it to suspend operations for rectification. Just as they were about to reopen after addressing the issues, I reported the supermarket for tax evasion. I originally intended to cause trouble for the Duncan family, but I didn't expect they were also taking kickbacks and issuing fake invoices. After being convicted on multiple charges, Simon's father, as the legal representative, was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and the supermarket's license was revoked. After a series of fines, Simon was moved from the VIP ward to a general ward. He started calling me frequently, hoping I would cover his medical expenses. I grew tired of making excuses, so when he called again, I began to cry uncontrollably. Tell him that I've encountered a financing scam and ask Simon to lend me his family's villa property deed for a mortgage loan. Once I get through this crisis, I'll pay you back double. Okay, Simon. The call was ruthlessly ended by Simon. I tossed my phone aside and continued to enjoy the massage and feeding from the young ladies. The photography enthusiast guy sent me another video. Simon went to find Lucy and reached out his hand to ask her for money. If you don't give me the money, return all the things I gave you before. Oh, and that house I bought for you too. I can't stand the 4-person ward. I need a private room to recover. Those people snore and grind their teeth. How could Lucy possibly give up what she had already obtained? She pushed Simon's wheelchair out the door. I haven't even sued you in court for cutting my face with a knife. How dare you ask me for money? The medical expenses for my plastic surgery will cost over 100,000. Besides, what you gave me is mine now. What right do you have to take it back? Although Simon is a man, he was no match for Lucy due to his severe illness. In just a couple of moves, Lucy pushed him out the door and even slapped him. Get out of here, or I'll call the police. Look, this is their unbreakable love. Soon, I received a call from Simon's mother, my mother-in-law, whose heart is smaller than a needle's eye. Now completely deflated, she asked me, as the legal wife, to sue Lucy and reclaim the house. That's the joint property of you and Simon. As long as you file a lawsuit, that wretched woman won't have a way out. Simon was also by his mother's side. He took the phone, his voice sounding somewhat dejected. I was blind. I never expected her to be that kind of person. Nancy, help me get the house back. From now on, I'll only stay by your side. It turns out that the house was a small duplex that Simon bought specifically to appease Lucy after he and I got our marriage certificate. It cost over 5 million. If it's mine, I certainly won't let anyone take advantage of me. The day Lucy received the court summons, she specifically called to curse me out. I thought there must be a reason she didn't do well in school, so I quickly gave her a crash course in legal knowledge and kindly suggested she find a lawyer to consult. When I got off work, I saw Lucy waiting for me at the company entrance, and she had brought her mother along. As soon as her mother saw me, she immediately knelt down, and her loud, wailing cries drew a crowd of onlookers. Please, Miss Nancy, spare me and my daughter. My daughter had nothing to do with your marriage to Mr. Simon. Don't push us to our deaths, I beg you. Many people raised their phones. Lucy had made up her mind to use public opinion to cyberbully me. She and her mother kept kowtowing to me until the police took them away, all the while recounting their tragic life story and the bullying they claimed I had inflicted on her. The public opinion indeed fermented as she wished. But when the angry netizens rushed to my social media, they found the videos I had posted before. My groom jumped into the sea to save her on our wedding day, while I knelt at the door of the medical room praying. There were also videos of Simon lying on the hospital bed, with Lucy kissing his cheek and feeding him fruit. There was even a video of Simon, on the day he was discharged from the hospital, asking me to go to the hospital to pick up his documents while he himself was drinking with his brothers, holding Lucy in his arms. Finally, there was an audio recording. My dear mother-in-law and my loyal husband want me, as the legal wife, to sue Lucy to get that house back. Public opinion completely sided with me, condemning Lucy for being a thief, crying, "Stop thief, it's really disgusting. How dare she go to that young lady's company and make a scene?" If it were me, I wouldn't even step out of the house without wrapping myself in a pound of plastic wrap. So the groom was having an affair with that woman from the start. So, was the drowning incident even real? Is the young lady getting a divorce? If you don't answer me, I'll drive a bulldozer and scoop her away. I thought the other woman was really beautiful, but with a face that looks like it was built for technological advancement. I don't know what the man saw in her. Isn't anyone going to criticize this man? He played around with women, and now he wants to take back the gifts he gave. Lucy is now facing the backlash of public opinion. Someone found out where she lives and threw dead rats and dead pigeons all at her doorstep. Her door was also vandalized with the words, "Drop Dead," written in red paint. Whenever she and her mother went out, people would point fingers at them. Some even threatened to run them over with a car. Lucy quickly went live to clarify the situation, hoping to gain sympathy. She brought out photos of her and Simon from their childhood and recounted their youthful, ambiguous stories. In the end, not only did she fail to save herself, But she also dragged Simon down with her, so it turns out this guy is the real culprit, wanting to have his cake and eat it too. What a piece of trash. Simon couldn't stay in the hospital any longer. Netizens kept barging in, taking photos of him and asking how he felt. Even though the inpatient ward was under lockdown, some bold individuals still tried to climb the walls. The other patients in the same room couldn't take it anymore and started blaming Simon. Simon was persuaded to leave and had to be discharged from the hospital to go home. After all the commotion, his health deteriorated even further. He called and asked me to drop the lawsuit, saying, "I never expected Lucy to cause such a scene. She used to be so gentle and lovely. She wasn't like this before." "Nancy, what exactly did you do to push Lucy to this point?" His mind seemed to be in chaos. At one moment, he was talking about his past life, and the next, he was recounting the miseries of this one. I didn't hang up the phone, just set it aside and went about my own business. An hour later, when I picked up the phone again, I could hear Simon crying to himself on the other end. "It shouldn't be like this. What exactly went wrong?" Cough, cough. How could I possibly withdraw the lawsuit? The court proceeded as scheduled, ruling that Lucy must return the property and all the things Simon bought for her after we got our marriage certificate. Lucy caused a scene in the courtroom and even injured a bailiff, resulting in her being detained for 15 days. I immediately had someone throw all of Lucy and her mother's belongings out of the house, and then listed the house for sale that very day. By the time Lucy was released 15 days later, the house had already changed hands. She then went to Duncan's house, intending to use her past relationship with Simon to play the victim, but as soon as she finished her emotional outburst, Simon's eyes rolled back and he fainted. After the hospital examination, they recommended that Simon's mother take him to a higher-level hospital. I secretly went to find the doctor, but I didn't expect her to recognize me. "Your husband is that idiot who jumped into the sea to save his mistress." "Ahem, no, I mean, please accept my condolences." She said Simon would not live more than 3 months at most. Of course, I wouldn't hide anything and truthfully explained the situation to Simon's mother. Amid Simon's mother's painful sobs, I promised that I would immediately raise the money and do everything possible to treat Simon. I sighed. I don't know what Lucy came to say to Simon, but it actually made him faint from anger. Simon's mother wiped away her tears, her face dark and terrifying, and said nothing more. The next morning, I received a call from the police. I rushed to the police station and learned that Simon's mother had gone to Lucy with a knife the previous night, chopped off both of her feet, and even Lucy's mother had one of her arms severed. I went to visit my mother-in-law, who seemed a bit deranged, constantly muttering, "You shameless bitch. Fooling around with my husband, and even teaching your daughter to seduce my son, you old whore, and your daughter is a little slut." After evaluation, it was confirmed that my mother-in-law had indeed gone insane. I spent money to have her admitted to a mental hospital, then entrusted a lawyer to inform my father-in-law in prison. "We are all family. How could we keep it from him?" The prison authorities said that my father-in-law was provoked and got into a fight with his cellmate. Due to the severity of his actions, his sentence is likely to be extended. After handling other matters, I finally went to Simon's hospital room. Simon's eyes were completely clouded. He stared at me for a long time before it seemed he finally recognized who I was. He smiled, but tears welled up in his eyes. "Nancy, please forgive me. I know I was wrong. I was blinded. Lucy actually said that I'm dying and asked me to leave all my inheritance to her. I'm such a scoundrel. How could I abandon you for her? You trusted me so much, cared for me with all your heart. How could I? Cough, cough." I smiled, leaned close to his ear, and whispered softly, "Simon, do you believe in reincarnation? Guess why you've had such a miserable life this time around?" He was dazed for a moment, then his eyes widened rapidly, looking at me in disbelief. "You said you weren't reborn. You lied to me." I laughed heartily, recounting to him one by one the fates of his parents and Lucy. "If it weren't for your mother going mad, I'd never have known that Lucy's mother was your father's mistress. To let the mistress live in your own home for 20 years, such magnanimity. I truly feel inferior. I just wonder if Lucy is related to you by blood." Simon weakly raised his hand, trying to grab me, but I dodged it. "Why, I already know I was wrong. Why can't you forgive me? Why did you let me end up like this? Don't you love me? I promise from now on I'll only love you, and we'll live a good life together. Just spend the money to cure me." Cough, cough. I shrugged my shoulders. "It's too late, Simon, too late. The doctor has already issued a critical condition notice. You only have a few days left. Cherish them. I originally wanted Lucy to come see you at the hospital one last time, but she cursed so harshly and refused to come no matter how I tried to persuade her. Your childhood sweetheart romance is truly fragile. Are you even more regretful now? Good, you should be. Simon tried to force himself up but fell heavily back onto the bed. The machine emitted a sharp, piercing alarm. When the medical staff rushed in, I slowly stepped out of the ward. After several hours of rescue efforts, the doctor told me to accept their condolences. Accept what condolences? With a beaming smile, I flushed Simon's ashes down the drain. The next day, I boarded the yacht with the 4 young ladies who had once served as my bridesmaids. Clear skies, blazing sun, and an endless sea. A brand new life was about to begin. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.